one, but I
Okay.
want to switch over to the other fronts that are happening just really quickly in Lebanon and the West Bank, and then Ali will talk about the attack by the Iraqi resistance on the American base in Jordan. But tomorrow, if we could go to number one, so Hezbollah showed us this week a capability that we've been waiting to see. The Israelis said that it was used previously, but this is the first that we've seen it on video. And what we're seeing here is a top attack anti-tank missile that the Iranians have created by reverse engineering a Spike anti-tank missile system that was captured during the July war in 2006. And the Israelis, immediately after it was captured, Israeli state television talked about the fact that it was captured. And you can see the weapon system in the Hezbollah museum in the south. So this is a top attack anti-tank missile, which allows it to non-line of sight, which means that you can fire the weapon, which we're seeing here. And then this is the original shot. And you can watch here as the missile's headed towards this hilltop, because that's where the fighter aimed it. Somebody separate from the fighter is able to take over the direction of this munition and redirect it from a safe third place to strike the target from above, which is something that we're watching here with Hezbollah knocking out Israeli surveillance equipment, which Israel uses to use all of its weapons, are based on network connectivity. So blowing up these radar domes and the way that we're seeing here is part of the warfare, part of the 750 operations in the north. We can see that being blown up. And so when the first video that we showed was shown, the IDF spokesperson, Arabic spokesperson, said that what we're watching actually didn't happen. Even though when we get in close here tomorrow, if we can pause, you can see on this base previous damage from Hezbollah strikes of the 750 that they've carried out in the last 115 days of this war.
Wow.
You can see the dome to the left of the triangle of the green arrows there. You can see the destruction in that radar dome to the left. So this weapon is something that can be fired from safety and then redirected from a third place, which allows the fighters a modicum of safety, but allows the weapon to be used in a way that hasn't been used against Israel before. And these weapons we're watching them hit radar domes, but they could be used against tanks and can evade the active protection systems of the tanks. So it's a significant upgrade that we're seeing here, and something that, if there were to be a war in the north, which Israel seems to be expecting, they have completely cleared out the north and the south, but they've completely cleared out the north. And for the first time in Israel's history, the buffer zones are now inside Israeli territory. The Gaza buffer zone is the Gaza envelope that has been depopulated, and the north as well, that there's buffer zones that are now not inside Lebanon and inside Gaza. They're inside Israel, which is a strategic bind for the Israelis. And then maybe tomorrow we can show this. Just Hezbollah released the second video, this one we're watching right here, because the Israelis said that the first one didn't happen. So they showed this one, which is much more clear example. But if you look at the Almas anti-tank weapon that the Iranians released in the last, it's only a couple years old, but it's the product of Iranian design, but also crucially, that it was reverse engineered from a captured Israeli weapon that the resistance then puts to effect. So if we could do number 3 tomorrow. Shortly after that, Hezbollah released a video with Nasrallah's voiceover from his last speech that we talked about Israel covering up their casualties, not admitting their soldiers are being killed in the north. So Hezbollah released this video, which might go along with the ceasefire talks that are happening. It seems as though all three fighting forces seem to believe that a ceasefire is at least a possibility, because Hezbollah tipped this weapon and are showing these videos at a time that the Israeli intelligence, Egyptian intelligence, American intelligence agencies are meeting in Paris to try to come up with some sort of ceasefire agreement. But we're seeing more soldiers here targeted than the Israelis have admitted to casualties in the north. And the voiceover that we've taken out of this video is Nasrallah saying that the Israelis are lying about their casualties, are hiding their casualties for morale in their forces. So that's one of the fronts, 750 attacks from Lebanon. We know the Yemen front has been 250 attacks. 200 drone attacks and 50 ballistic and cruise missile attacks. But we also have resistance in the West Bank that we've seen. So this is a shot of the roundabout outside of the Jenin refugee camp with an Israeli vehicle. Again, no casualties reported by the Israelis. And this is in the outer edge of the Jenin refugee camp, which has been one of the places of fierce resistance in the north of the West Bank. Last year, 2013, more than 2,000 resistance operations in the West Bank. If this was any other time, we would be talking about the third intifada in the West Bank. There's sites of armed struggle yesterday in 10 spots. And then we go to the next video tomorrow is from Tulkarm, where there's been fierce resistance as well. And in the Nur Shams camp, where there's only 7,000 Palestinians living in densely populated area, the Israelis invaded earlier this month with 1,000 soldiers for a population of 7,000, with fighters who have been besieged for 2 decades inside of their ghettos in the West Bank. So that's a shot from Tulkarm. Just wanted to show, I wanted to get a bit of the West Bank resistance into these videos, because Israel has multiple fronts of this war that are happening right now. The resistance is fierce and heroic in Gaza, but it's happening all over. If this was normal times, we'd be saying there was a war in the north, and we'd be saying that there was an intifada in the West Bank.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that, Jon. And I did want to ask a little bit about if you and Ali could talk about the discussions that are happening around a possible ceasefire. While you were showing those videos, Jon, and analyzing, I got a text from our good friend, Dr. Mads Gilbert, who said that the forecast for the coming weekend is extremely worrying for Gaza, 5 to 7 degrees Celsius at night, gale force winds, rain, extreme risk of accidental man-made hypothermia hitting children, diseased and frail people, weakening immune systems, aggravating the famine that Israel is causing. So, I mean, it can't come soon enough. But are the discussions worth it? Is anything promising?
It does sound like it. I don't want to speculate on these kind of back channel things, but it does sound like it. The meetings that are happening between Egyptian intelligence, Shabak, Mossad, the CIA, and the Prime Minister of Qatar appear to be moving. They were supposed to end last week, and all those intelligence chiefs remained in place to try to negotiate the ceasefire. Yeah. I mean, one of the main sticking points appears to be that the Qassam brigades have been clear from the beginning that there wasn't going to be a series of pauses, which has been something that Israel's normal wars carry out, these series of pauses, that there was not going to be that until there was a ceasefire, which makes perfect sense when your population is living through the conditions that you just described. The Palestinians are living through awful, horrific conditions. Pausing a war for 2 weeks so that you can then resume massacring people isn't something that the resistance is putting up as their first position, that they can do a staged release. But we do know that there are more captives to be released.
High level ones too. I mean,
well, yes, there's high level ones but there's also the husbands of some of the ladies that were released, that the Palestinians want the elderly prisoners in Palestinian Israeli jails, the Palestinians in Israeli jails to be released. And Israel rejected that in the first round. They're just letting their people they're not prioritizing, obviously, the captives. And that's one thing that one of the captives who was released said. She said she didn't recognize this country because normally Israel cared disproportionately about their soldiers and were willing to trade them for 1,000 Palestinian fighters, and that doesn't appear to be the case. Now we're living in the mass Hannibal era.
Right.
So I think that the sticking point seems to be on the way that the release unfolds. The Americans are trying to get it in a staged release, and it's not clear. I mean, I think it takes a couple of days to get the message to Gaza and to get it back. The outside leadership of Hamas are effectively diplomats at this stage of the game. They're not the decision makers. So we'll have to see. But it seems the way that that Hezbollah showing this new weapon, the way that the intelligence chiefs are meeting, continuing to meet past the deadline in Paris, that possibly we're moving towards some sort of agreement.
Well, it's clear that the U.S. and Israel want an agreement, but they want it on their terms. They want
Right.
to achieve at the negotiating table what they haven't achieved on the ground. And I think it's very difficult to see how the resistance could accept anything less than their red line of a permanent ceasefire, among other things, after all this sacrifice that Palestinians have made. So we are in the realm of speculation. I think it's clear that the US has realized that Israel is a dog that can't hunt. Is that the phrase?
Right.
And so they want a way out that preserves their, that saves face. And the resistance is saying, the battlefield conditions is what dictates the terms. And on the battlefield, Israel is losing. Again, we always stress that murdering women and children and men and destroying schools and buildings and universities and hospitals is not winning. It's actually a sign of losing. So we don't know. We hope, for the sake of everyone in Gaza, that there will be a ceasefire, but one that makes sure they will never face this genocidal violence again. And that seems to be the bottom line there.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.